So I remember, and I've talked about this before, but when I first started out cooking, I had never had sea bass as a fish. I've never had skate, even though it's a popular fish in Korean cuisine. So when I first started cooking professionally and seeing black sea bass and skate all from the Atlantic and near New York City waters, I was blown away because I'd never seen anything like this. And I thought black sea bass was delicious. And it wasn't until much later that I was able to go to restaurants where they would serve black sea bass. But growing up in Virginia, that's just not something that I ever saw. It was the provenance of sort of higher end restaurants. And skate was not on any menu item. And I just sort of marveled at being able to fillet something that had completely different sort of biology, it seems, than a traditional fish because it has more cartilage. It's more closely related, I think, to a shark than a traditional fish. And the reason I talk about that is these are things that you would find in abundance in 1999, 2000. You cannot really find them on any menus today. And that's happened in my lifetime. I talk about going to Tsukiji. Tsukiji is no longer there. It was the fish market in Japan, and it's in a new location. It's under a new name. I can never remember the new name. But I would go every time I was there to the tuna auctions. And if you would look at photos over the tunas, it happens really early in the morning. They're all frozen. They're like torpedoes. You can see year by year the size of tuna getting smaller and smaller and smaller. At least that's what I felt. And in general, you can't we're just talking about fish here. This is a slow, gradual decline. And I'm a big angler, and I think it's crazy that on the East Coast, you used to be able to fish, at least in the Connecticut area, for Atlantic salmon. And now that's an endangered species. You cannot fish for that. And more importantly, there's no way that you could even put that on the menu. So wild Atlantic salmon, if that's on any menu, that's a dead lie. It's impossible to do. And the previous generations were able to do these things. And I wonder, now that I'm a father of two, what are the things that my kids are eating now that they probably won't have in 20 years' time? Because a lot of things changed in 20 years. So this is a hopeful podcast. We're going to talk to Sam Kass. He was formerly of the Obama administration. He's somebody I work with right now, and he has a new book out called The Last Supper. And it is, I think, essential reading if you care about the foodways and the leadership and a lot of the answers that we need to get fixed in America today. So Sam's one of the best and brightest. He's a fantastic chef, just general good guy. So stay tuned for this. Welcome to the DaveChang Show, part of the Ringer Podcast Network, presented by Major Dylan Media. Thank you, Yola Tango, as always. In the intro, I gave you a long rambling spiel about, fish declining, but this is something I deal with a lot. I've mentioned before, we've had some of the people from Acre on, Lucas Mann and Sam Kass are people I work with, and it's hard to sort of talk about foodways and the food crisis in America, from the SNAP program to food waste to just the environment, all of this. And I also understand too, it's like I'm the furthest thing from being the perfect advocate for any of this stuff because I'm a giant hypocrite, right? I'm not perfect in anything that I do, and I certainly don't eat the way that I need to be eating. And in general, I think a lot of these conversations about the environment or anything are a lot more nuanced. We can have everything, it just can't happen at once. And I just don't want to have these conversations on social media. So I think today is something that could have been a much longer podcast, but we'll leave it at that. Stay tuned. We're going to have a good conversation with Sam Kass, author of The Last Supper. I'm joined with the son of Chicago. I feel like we have had a lot of Chicago on our podcast as of late. And I work with him at Acre Ventures. although I haven't been on a meeting in a month or so, but one of the best guys I know, one of the better hangs in the world, and he happens to be multi-hyphenate, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. Welcome, Sam Kass.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
What's up, man? I always wanted to tell you this. There's a couple schools in America where if you go there, you're just a fucking nerd, like Caltech. And the only other one really, MIT, and the dark horse nerd school is University of Chicago. Just fucking nerds and dorks. But you're not either of those. What's going on?
Dude, I was a fish out of water there. Like it was funny. It was a big culture shock for me, I gotta say. When I knew I was in a different world, I actually was trying to make it to the major leagues. So I played 2 years of junior college baseball, like no academics. I was in classes I didn't even know I was in. I got A's in these classes I didn't even know I was registered in. So I show up to the first day of baseball practice there, and they were like, and I was practicing like 10 hours a day. At UC, it's like we practice 2 hours a day. There's no practice on Thursdays because it's science lab day. So you have to do your science labs then. And we never would go more than 2 hours. I was like, where the fuck am I? So it took me a while.
I didn't know Chicago had any sports teams.
Yeah, barely. Exactly. I went there when I gave up on my dreams to play. I'll tell you that much.
And then like, in the food world, you hear things, right? And Obama gets elected and like, wow, we finally have like a cool, smart, savvy president. And then all the women in my life are like, hey, did you know that he's got this super attractive like chef? And for every chef in the food space, I'm sure we all heard about you and we're like, enough already.
Yeah.
Yeah. That happened too. So tell me how did you go from University of Chicago to being, what was exactly your role under the Obama administration?
I was senior policy advisor for nutrition for the president. I was the executive director of Let's Move, Michelle's big health campaign. And then I was their chef. I cooked for them 5 nights a week.
Back in Chicago, you were their personal chef.
In Chicago, so I was 2 years for them in Chicago, and then I came with them to the White House and did all that at the White House.
Were you like, yeah, this guy's definitely going to go places?
I mean, what was funny about it, in fact, Michelle writes about this in this book. Like her and I got all caught up one night after dinner about like, oh, if we made it to the White House, we could do a garden, and if that worked, we could do a big health campaign, and we could change the world. We got all like excited, and then we realized like this man's name is Barack Hussein Obama. He's 30 points down the polls. Like, what are we doing? Like, he doesn't have a chance, And we just started laughing at ourselves. So we got so excited about it. I had to apologize to him and be like, we doubted. It wasn't really, we just were doubting whether the country was really ready, right? But we had to make amends on that one.
So what was the initial sort of conversation? And hey, Sam, you're coming to Washington, D.C. with us.
It was actually funny. So I had sort of talked to Michelle about it. But he's the president, right? So there's a lot going on, and so so a few weeks had gone by, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get the offer. And I had gotten into NYU for their food studies program, their grad studies program, and he walked in and was like, "So I was thinking, if you want, maybe you could come with us to DC, and you could." Cook for us and maybe, work with Michelle on all these issues you've been working on, do a big effort on that. But, you're probably going to want to go to grad school at NYU. And I assume that's probably what you think is a better road for you, which I understand. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? Like, fuck no, I'm coming with you, man. So it was like, and he's like, all right, cool. And he just walked out, and Michelle started laughing. She's like, there's your offer. So, and so that's how it went. So I signed up from there.
And it was just a natural progression getting into food policy from there.
Yeah, well, I had actually started really studying it and working on it. I trained in Vienna, and sort of early on in my time there, I got kind of jolted into kind of what was happening around food and health, and started spending a ton of time studying. Like I kind of put down cookbooks that I'd been pouring through and started reading sort of obscure food policy books and history of agriculture books. So by the time I started cooking for them, I was already deeply focused on those issues. I didn't know what I wanted to do with them, but I cared about it, and so it was sort of a perfect match. And from there we started. I changed all their food, and then we started. She started seeing the impact, and then started talking about the issues, and kind of went from there.
Still doesn't explain how the hell you got into food.
So, so I was at
These are things
University of
I've never
Chicago.
asked you.
Yeah, yeah. It's I was at University of Chicago, and a friend of mine's boyfriend was a sous chef at this restaurant 312 Chicago on Randolph Street. Dean Zanello, wonderful, wonderful man. And I always wanted to go to culinary school at the time. I'd always said, one day I want to learn how to cook, for my future family, and just life's better if you can feed yourself well. And so I said that to him, and he was like, why would your dumbass go to culinary school and spend all that money? Like, just come in and hang. So I did that. I just started coming in and working. And after a couple of weeks, Dean was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to start paying you if you keep showing up in my kitchen. So I did that for a season. And then when I went to Vienna, I said to the head of the program, like, I hear Vienna has nice pastries. Maybe I could get into a pastry shop once a week and just sort of see what's up. And so she came back and said, this is actually what it was. She was like, my husband's uncle's friend from college, son, rides bicycles with the sous chef of the best restaurant in Vienna. He's willing to meet you tomorrow. That was my second day in Vienna. And so I meet this like insane guy on this random street, and he's like, are you the Yankee who wants to cook? And I was like, yeah, that's me. He's like, all right, well, come tomorrow, bring your knives. I was like, my knives? Like, I don't have any fucking knives, and I don't have any fucking money. So like, I don't know. So I still have the knife. I went to some shop. I bought the cheapest Japanese, like $15 Japanese vegetable knife that they have, which is the cheapest knife they had, and showed up the next day with this one knife and, absolutely no idea what I was doing. And they ended up taking me and his family and just old school, kick your ass till you could barely stand training. So I did that for about 4 months, then went back because my sort of abroad program had run out. Tried to get papers to go back. I couldn't. So I just went back without any papers. So I cooked illegally for about a year until I ultimately got run out of town by the authorities. They found out I was there and like threatened to arrest me. And so I left. But in the meantime, I like lived in the sous chef's apartment. They paid me with a little money out of their pocket. I could eat whatever I wanted. And they just basically paid me in knowledge and just whooped my butt. And so that's how I got trained.
And you spent some time with Paul and the Avec
Yeah,
team?
so then I sort of cooked and traveled around the world for a few years, ran out of money, then came to Chicago, and then I started cooking at Avec within the year that they opened. So sort of one of two guys who got hired in the second round of people brought in, and the restaurant was just, on fire and sort of turning Chicago food into a whole different direction, which was so fun. I mean, we had so much fun.
That was
still
the
longest
coolest
service
one of the coolest restaurants of all time.
Yeah, of all time. And still the longest service. It was our service was 3 to 1 a.m. It was like so fucking crazy to think back on what we were doing. And it was packed from like opening all the way to closing on Friday and Saturday night. But we had the blast, and Corn was just unbelievable mentor, and I learned so much from them. And then sort of did a little more cooking around, like started doing personal chef for a family that was in New Zealand. So then I started sort of doing that for a few months and traveling the rest of the year. And then finally was like, all right, I'm like 27. All my friends are getting big jobs and making money, and I'm broke with a bag on my back. I was like, all right, I think it's time to try to figure out what I should do with my life. And so headed back to Chicago. And right when the campaign had launched, so the timing was good. And then got reconnected with Michelle, who I knew them a little bit in high school, just from the neighborhood, but not that well. And she had no help, right? She was just a mom with two young girls. The only person helping them out was grandma, and she was sort of feeling the pinch. So she helped bring me in.
That's wild. You had no desire to sort of become an executive chef of your own?
So I loved it, but I also felt like, because I had spent so much time on these, kind of the issues around health and, and the planet as it pertains to food, I felt like being in a restaurant is constraining in that way. Like, you're the master of your domain in that world, but I was trying to figure out how to change some of these bigger systemic issues that were driving like what was ending up on our plates. And so I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I felt like I had so much respect, still most of my closest friends are in this world, and it's an unbelievable feat to make these restaurants work and on a night in and night out. But for me, I felt like there was something else to do around the food system, and that even without knowing what it was, I was like, I don't think that path is the path for me. And I recognized that pretty early on.
I don't think a lot of people make that decision until well after the fact, right?
Yeah.
Like,
So it's
shit,
too
I could
late,
have done
right?
something else. So like when I traveled, and I think traveling when I was younger was absolutely instrumental in shaping who I am today, particularly from the culinary end, but just as a human being as well. And the big holy fuck moment was, oh my God, I'm in China and I just had 3 giant amazing meals and I spent less than like $1.
Mm-hmm.
And eating well throughout the world, particularly in Asia, and even say Japan, which was so expensive, but I was like I was living in a homeless shelter. I literally had no money, but I was still eating really well.
Yep.
And coming back home at that time, we were similar age. It was like, wait a second here. Our food is terrible compared to the rest of the world. Where did you have this sort of epiphany as well when you're traveling the world? And where did you think that America was at compared to everywhere else?
Yeah. I mean, two of them come to mind, very different orientations. Probably the single most memorable thing I've ever eaten was a bowl of, of noodle soup in Vietnam on a little bread plastic stool that was actually in the street. Like her table was sort of on the sidewalk, but you sat in this crazy street. And there's a big line. I was like, this looks good. Let me try it. And there was something about the depth of flavor. She had some grilled pork on top. It was an epiphany of flavor, and I couldn't even wrap my mind around how good it was. And it was $1, maybe even less. And I was like, what the? It was the same way, like, what? Like, I've never eaten anything that tasted this good in my whole life. And it did make me think, like, man, we're really missing something here. Like, something's not right. And there's so much to discover. And it's not about all the pomp and circumstance. Like, actually, like what quality means is actually not what I've been told, right? Like, that was his high quality, most delicious thing I've eaten. It was less than $1. And the other sort of flip side of that was I sort of became friends with these winemakers in Italy, sort of in the same time, kind of randomly, and they invited me to come back for a harvest. And so I came back for this harvest, and which was incredible, right? And it's like the hardest work you'll ever do, and it was also like a party from like the 6 a.m. on. It was sort of this very interesting mix, but they were so excited that I was there that they made their very traditional ravioli naturale, like those teeny little raviolis. The husband and the wife were from separate hills. They got into a screaming match because one hill pinches, the other one pressed it, and they literally were screaming at you like, how dare you teach him the wrong way? You're fucking him up. Like, they went crazy. But at the end of, like, when we were about to eat, this old dude named Nello came in. He had like overalls and a red handkerchief. He's just a classic out of a movie. He's probably 70 years old. And he just popped down with a big sort of sack full of truffles. And I had never tasted a truffle before. And because they were so, special and expensive, and they gave him a little bit of money, and everybody had their own truffle, and it was like with a butter knife, we just all scraped our truffles on this bowl of like the most perfect pasta, and so like maybe the best thing I've ever eaten today as well. Like, with those are the two most memorable meals of my life, and they were farmer food, and like farmers been eating this and finding truffles for centuries, and only recently have they become this like very upper class, coveted food. And it just also revealed, like, yeah, food is food, right? And we can put all this extra stuff on top that's because something's rare. But for them, it was just it's just part of what they ate in the fall. And it was special, but it wasn't like, didn't have all the wealth associated with it. And it sort of took the facade off of it in some way. And it was just so beautiful and wonderful. So there's just, yeah, those moments when you go out there in the world, you see how people relate to it. It changed your perspective profoundly.
Did you think that that with all of your work in policy and the Obama administration, and then your own work when you left the White House, and you did the first garden since Eleanor Roosevelt. You did the American Chef's Course. You did so many different things, for the culinary community. Did you think that America was the worst in terms of how we dealt with food compared to other countries, compared to all the resources we had? Or were we like mid tier, or were we the best?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think we have like competing food cultures in America, right? Like there's the industrial fast food, sort of cliche American food culture that we export all over the world and, is quite abysmal in many ways. But we also have so many pockets of like such rich culture and such incredible food. And obviously, over the course of the last, 20, 30 years, and man, you've played a huge role in this, we've elevated cuisine here in pretty incredible way. So I think the answer would be very different 30, 40 years ago than it would be now. And it's not that like good food didn't exist in some pockets, but it's become much more, we've learned how to eat much better. And so I think kind of both are true. Like depending on what vantage point you look um, in some ways, and when you get out of the cities, like in some ways, it's like really abysmal what people eat every single day. And yet some of the best food in the world is being cooked and eaten here at the same time. And so, I mean, I think there's some places where you go, it's like the food is really just not quite. I'm not going to name countries because, people will everybody's got pride, no matter how good or bad it is, everybody's got equal pride in their food. Uh, but it's, yeah, I think we're just a mixed bag.
So why is our whole system broken then?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of your book's about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, that's on the mass, the mass side of how we eat. And
what do you mean by what is mass size?
I'm just mean all the hyper processed, not all of it, but the over reliance on hyper processed food that is, pretty nutrient devoid, that is made in a way that is not taking into account like the impact on the planet and our ability to feed ourselves in the future, is mortgaging both our health and our kids, ability to eat, and certainly enjoy the great lives that we've had. And you start to look at what's happening, a lot of the foods that we take for granted that we love, like coffee, wine, chocolate, stone fruit like Georgia peaches, or shellfish and crustaceans, like they're really getting hammered, and they probably won't be available to your average consumer. For like our kids, you don't have, if you're sort of a middle class, you're probably not going to be drinking a normal cup of coffee or just having a bar of chocolate, or it's going to be too expensive. And over time, it's going to be harder and harder to produce. And some of this stuff is starting to play out now. I mean, even chocolate prices were up 200% last year because of drought. We've had the snow crab fishery closed for 2 years. They opened it up, but very small this year, because we lost 80% of the snow crabs because of what's happening due to climate in 5 years. Like we lost almost 9 billion crabs in 5 years. Like it is starting to take a real toll in terms of our ability to feed ourselves. And if we don't, and that's not just the food system, although the food system plays a big role in it, which we can get into. But if we don't start being much more aggressive on dealing with this challenge, our quality of life is going to be much lower than what we've enjoyed.
So who's to blame? Whose shoulder is most of the responsibility? Is it the consumer, or is it, giant companies that are terrible like Monsanto?
Yeah, I mean, look, I definitely think, I think consumers have a role to fix it, but I wouldn't say we as a group are to blame. I mean, first, most of this is being driven by our energy production for sure right now. So they are driving a huge amount of the footprint. But food and agriculture globally is right behind it. It's the number 2 driver of emissions around the world. It's the number 1 driver of deforestation and land use change. Like every time you see the rainforest get cut down in Brazil, like actually I was just there a couple months ago, witnessing all of this. It's all for cows. It's all to plant seed and graze cows
for beef jerky.
Yeah.
Really?
Like, yeah, I know, it's crazy. It's a wildly inefficient way to produce food. And it's we use up 70% of the world's fresh water. So as a system, we are really, eating the planet, and we are driving by far the most environmental degradation. So, we have a lot to do to change how we're eating. The good news is that, food system in and of itself can actually drive a lot of the solutions that I think we need across the board. But that is where the eaters come in. Right now, nobody really gives a shit about sustainability. Like nobody's buying at scale. There's some consumers who are really committed to it, but the most of the market is not saying this is important to us. They're saying, I need delicious food that's cheap and convenient. That's what drives the market. And until that changes and we start saying like high quality product has to take into account the impact on our planet and our ability to keep eating like this, then we're not going to be able to get out of this. So I think, we have to change if we're going to do that.
I have this conversation a lot with just random people in the food space. And I mean, you know me, I'm always doom and gloom, but
Yeah.
I was like, this change probably will only come about when there is not food to be had. Do
Yeah.
you think that we can have legislation or some kind of common sense that might buffer that and we can be a little bit more forward thinking and instead of it being overnight?
I mean, so I worry that your take on it is right. I think the thing is that some of that is starting to happen right now. A couple of years ago, we lost 90% of the Georgia peach crop because of extreme weather, 90%. And probably in give or take 15, 20 years, there's really not going to be many peaches grown in Georgia at all, as one example of thousands. So I think that reality, like it feels like a far off future. I think that reality is actually upon us. And, incrementally, it's going to increase. And so hopefully we don't wait till really where there's no food, because at that point it's gonna be too late. Like we will have no ability to control and shape the outcomes. I think so. I would hope that we would be a little more forward leaning, and there has been fits and starts of really important progress. Right now, we are in an administration that has, gutted every climate related policy there is, and instead are focused on, under the guise of make America healthy again, like on food dyes and seed oils, which is like complete bullshit. And they are absolutely undermining our ability to be healthy in the future. I think it's the most dangerous administration of public health we've ever seen. RFK, leading the way. So right now it's hard to see how we come together with that kind of forward leading policy that not just like reduces our negative impact, but also readies the system to deal with all this volatility, extreme weather that's happening. But that's what has to happen. So hopefully, regardless of party, we get politicians in there that take this seriously, because it is a very real problem and it's upon us. It's not a future state.
I mean, what's it feel like to have your entire work, sort of life's work at the White House completely destroyed?
Yeah.
It's gotta be
Yeah.
a gut punch.
Well, so it's funny. It's actually like a double whammy, because you have at one hand like a complete assault on so much of the stuff that we championed, and that the prior administration has also in some ways pushed forward. And they're also like taking the mantle, right? So they're like gutting a bunch of stuff and also saying like, we are the champions of health. And it's like, I feel like I'm living in the upside down. And now there's all these Republicans who used to fight us on literally everything we did. I mean, like everything we did, who are now being like, we have a crisis, we have to solve this, and you're just like, what the fuck? Like, what is happening? What is happening here? Now, look, I welcome everybody in politics from both sides of the aisle to care about this issue. It should be bipartisan. So that part, I don't think it's going to stick, because I think it's just a moment in Trump. But I hope it does. That could give us a huge amount of opportunity to make some progress. But right now, they're not focusing on anything that matters. In fact, quite the opposite. We're focusing on Tylenol, like causing autism, which of course is just pure insanity. And so, if we had bipartisanship focused on the things that mattered, then yeah, we could solve many of the problems we face without a doubt.
So if I was to make you the czar of all food and foodways in America, you have complete authority, autonomy to do whatever you wanted, what would be some of the highlights that you would do to fix how fucked everything is?
That would be so fun. That would be great, man.
So you see, sometimes North Korea is not so bad, right?
Exactly right. I mean, shit, that may be where we're headed. So, uh, you know, not to get too boring and a bunch of weedy policy stuff, and in this book, I like really struggle with this. Like, man, writing about policy is really fucking boring. It's hard to make it interesting. Uh, so, I think two big buckets on the ag side. I think we need to start basically incentivizing farmers to farm in a much more regenerative way, which basically means not just thinking about what we take out, but also what we're preserving and building and the health of the soil, namely, and then the sort of health of the ecology around our agricultural systems. So they're not wiping out biodiversity. And so we are building soil health that can resist and withstand a lot of the volatility, the drought, et cetera, that we're going to face. There's lots of specific leverage that the government has to do to pull that. Part of when you start farming that way, we can start sequestering a ton of carbon. And there's new tools and technologies that, 110 metric tons of carbon that is in our atmosphere used to be 110 million, metric tons used to be in our atmosphere, or, that is in our atmosphere used to be in our soils. That's 80 years of our current global footprint. When you start farming this way, you start putting that carbon back in the soil. And so we should start paying farmers to do that and paying them for that carbon sequestration. That would be a transformational incentive around how we are actually producing our food. So that would be one. I think also we have to add a ton of diversity into our system, because we basically eat 12 plants and 5 animals globally. It's like 60 to 70% of all calories consumed come from just 12 plants and 5 animals. And even in those 12 plants, 5 animals, the genetic diversity is very limited. So we have all of our eggs basically in a couple baskets. And that was fine when like the climate was stable. We've had the most stable climate in the last 10,000 years than we can observe in the history of planet Earth. We've just gotten super lucky. We've had lots of soil and lots of water. We're about to have extreme volatility with not much soil and no water. And when you only have a few things you're growing globally, it's a lot of risk when something goes wrong. So I think we have to embed diversity throughout our system. On the health side, man, there's like tons to do. We have big levers around, SNAP and WIC, the, hunger programs with our military. We have to start getting much more nutrient dense foods in there. We made a lot of progress on school nutrition when we were in there, but there's more work to do. Right now, the way a food company can put in an ingredient into a food product is basically like, trust us, it's fine. I think we should change it. So it's called GRAS, generally recognized as safe. I think we should change how we do that to make sure it's proven to be safe before a company can add it to our food, as opposed to waiting until there's a problem. There's some bolder things around sugar that we could try, and these empty calories. I think that's much more complicated. This is where the consumer comes in. People like what they're eating. Like, tell Coca-Cola, tell people that they're going to take by law, take some sugar out of their Coca-Cola. It's going to be a tough pill for people to swallow. So politically, I think the things that could really move the needle on health are much more fraught. But there's some things worth trying. But I think our culture ultimately has to change. I think that's the thing we gloss over. I think a lot of people think like, just wave the magic policy wand and you could solve this. And when I was in the White House and, Michelle Obama looks at you and says, all right, dude, we're here, go fix it and like make it real, because I'm not here for show. You're like, okay, first, like, oh shit. Like, that's like, man, it's intense. And you just realize, okay, what does change actually look like? And what does the government actually control? And what is actually driven by businesses and our culture? And in the end, like, our food culture likes big portions. They like super sweet things. And that is the thing that has to change if we're really going to tilt companies in a different direction. It's not something that's easily regulated from Washington. And so I think that's a lot of the work. The cultural work is the hardest, slowest, messiest work, but I think it's the most important work. But if you tax it for companies, the problem is what they'll say is you're just raising food prices, and people don't like that.
But what if that's necessary to prevent people from buying?
I think there's a strong argument that it is. 1 in 3 Americans are on track to have diabetes in their lifetime. It's untenable where the health of the nation is.
So would like a tax on sugar be something you would do? You'd be a very unpopular food czar.
I would be a super unpopular food guy. Yeah, I mean, there's different. You could do a big sugar tax. People have done a lot of work on soda taxes. I was like, what about the rest of the sugar? So I think when you go that route, you have to tax it at least maybe in where it's added to ingredients. Like I wouldn't tax like sugar on somebody's table, but that's like now you're going to get your ass kicked. And so, yeah, I think that would be a hard policy to accomplish, but I think one that could have a meaningful impact. The other way you could do it is say you have to limit the amount of sugar that is in any kind of product per serving. I think that might actually be a more effective way, but complicated, hard to do well, also not popular. And so, I don't have a lot of faith that a policy that could really move the needle like that would ever be able to get done.
You know, again, I mentioned earlier that he's one of the partners at Acre Venture, and they focus on a lot of environmental, sustainable ag investments. And one of the things I learned over, I don't know now, years of being on these calls since the start of the pandemic really is I didn't think I would ever hear the term carbon credit as much as I have.
Yeah.
Like at least 10 times a call.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain to everybody? Because it gets thrown around, but I don't think
Yeah.
people even understand what the hell it is.
Yep. Yep. So carbon credit is basically 1 ton of one credit equals 1 ton of carbon. And essentially the system that people are trying to set up is for one company that says emitting a lot of greenhouse gases, like a big tech company, for example, we're emitting a lot right now and even, about to emit a lot more in the coming years, that they pay somebody else who has a technology or a system that is reducing carbon. And they basically fund that reduction to offset, the amount of carbon that they're releasing. There's lots of different kinds of credits, and some are better than others. The thing a lot of these credits suffer with is, how permanent is that sequestration? So a forest was a big early area to purchase carbon credits. The trees grow, they're capturing carbon. You can measure that, and then a big tech coming and say, listen, so we emitted this much, but we paid for all these credits to grow these new trees. Now we're trying to be more even. Problem is, like for a forest, like what happens if it burns? It's like that carbon's in the air. So there's issues around the quality of those credits, how long they're going to actually keep the carbon out of the atmosphere. And progressive friends of, in this world, I find to be so dogmatic on these issues that they're kind of missing the point. They're arguing like, is 500 years of capturing that carbon enough? Should it be 1,000 years? So there's like this weird 1,000-year permanence thing, which I think is insane, because if we don't get a lot more money flowing to projects that can actually sequester carbon, we're not going to be around in 1,000 years, or there'll be very little left in 1,000 years. So I think food and ag is a huge opportunity. One of the companies that we're invested in is a company called Lone Bio that has fungi microbes that coat seeds of, say, soybean, and will sequester between 1 and 3 tons of carbon per acre per year. We're growing 93 million acres of soy in the US. There's 95 million acres of soy in Brazil. You start to do the math on the amount of carbon that farmers just in that one crop, let alone everything else, could start pulling down. You could have a really big impact on the planet's global carbon footprint. Rice is also a huge driver of emissions, and there's big opportunities there. So, but that system has been under assault. Obviously, it's become a very partisan thing. But I think it's absolutely critical, because what people don't get about it, at least for me, is that it's kind of a revolution of thinking. Right now, our economy only values what we extract. We only value the wood from the forest. We only value the soybean or the corn or the whatever we're taking out of the soil. And we have not figured out how to value the services that the world around us provides us. Like that forest is providing all kinds of other things. It takes out carbon, but it also helps us preserve and clean our water. It produces oxygen. It preserves tons of biodiversity that is necessary to preserve these ecosystems around us that we like basically support life on planet Earth. And we've not valued that in any way. So, somebody decides to cut down a mangrove because they want to build a hotel. That's an obvious decision because we don't value the mangrove. The mangrove is the foundation of those fisheries. Without mangroves, those fisheries are dying. We have no fish. But it's a rational economic decision right now to cut down the mangrove because we have not placed the value on what it does for broader society. And so when you start with carbon, for me, it's the first way in to start valuing, what is needed to preserve these systems. And I think you can build there from valuing, water or biodiversity or, mangrove in a way that's not. So that's a tough problem to solve, but I think it's the fundamental one.
And how do you get companies to take carbon credits more seriously? I mean, people can trade these things like they're stocks, right?
Yeah. You can make some real money in this if you know what you're doing. So, I mean, it's a great question. There was a lot of momentum because there was some threat of regulation and also like a big cultural push. So like, we care about this. The world's worried about climate. We got to take action. And, you see what leadership does to like the culture of business. And you see how business will turn on a dime about what they purportedly care about, depending on who's setting the terms, right? And that cultural pullback has been real. So I think the pressure on these companies to, even if it's not a hard law, to like start acting is really dissolved over these last little while. And the threat or real regulation that mandates it is gone. I think in the end, you're going to need laws to say, it's basically the cap and trade system, which is like, this is the limit for how much an industry can emit. And if you go over, you got to, pay down from a carbon credit. I think you're going to need those rules, some version of that put in place in the end. The question is it going to be too late? I mean, because we just a few days ago, we passed there's a series of tipping points where scientists are tracking, like as these environmental systems start to break down, and we just passed the tipping point for reefs. The global temperature of the ocean is now too hot for tropical reefs, which of course 25% of marine animals live in coral reefs, and 1 billion people depend on them for food, and they're basically dying in mass around the world. 80% of reefs have experienced extreme bleaching over the last 2 years. So we're starting to get to a point where, like, it's going to be too late. So that's the thing that worries me, is that our inaction right now, we won't be able to make up for it.
Sometimes I find that we're in a weird position at Acre because a lot of these companies that are working on these solutions that clearly are addressing everything that you're talking about across the board, it sometimes feel like you're betting on a dystopian future, but you're not. It's a weird place to be. And, it's like, for example, like one of the solutions I hear from people, even though I don't think it's possible, like, what would you think about vertical farming, right? Like, you don't want vertical farming to work.
Right.
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 But at the same time, like, it's a weird paradox.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, the one where that plays out to the extreme is like lab grown meat.
We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah. Right. Like, it's like, man, like maybe that's going to be necessary one day, but shit, I hope not. I mean, the people who are working on those technologies, like, come by it honestly. They're trying to do the right thing. They think they're going to solve an existential problem. But that's just not the future that I want. I don't want our, steak to be grown in a tank. Like,
but I don't, but Sam, like, we've had this talk. I don't think we have a choice.
I mean,
that's to me like the weird place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The question becomes, where do we put our energy and resource? What do we try to make true? I'm humble enough by the scope of the challenge to know that, like, we're going to need every tool that we can get to manage the insanity, like the real insanity that's possible in the future. So I don't think tools inherently are good or bad. I think, depending on how they're deployed and used, will answer that question. So I hear you, but I feel like we still got to fight for a future we want to leave for our kids. Right?
No, absolutely.
We both got young kids, and it may be that, like, they're going to only be eating like a pork chop from a tank, but Shit, I hope not. I
Right.
mean, there's something inherent. There's that for me is like the most dystopian. It's like that the utter disconnect from the natural world and the way we feed ourselves. I think comes at a real cost to society. Like it's kind of eating is sort of the last interaction with nature that most people have. So if you live in a city, like that's the one time on a given day you're actually, interacting with the natural world. And I think removing ourselves from even that last little bit of connection, I don't know, comes at a pretty big cost. So I hope not. You might be right, dude. I can't take issue with that, but man, that's rough.
I mean, again, because if I have a conversation with my friends that are sort of, let's say, more, they're not Trumpers, but they're a little bit more Republican, and
Yeah.
their argument is science is going to figure this out.
Right.
And that's the conundrum I feel like we're in, because, well, we don't really want that, but we also need it to be there just in case.
Right.
It's
Right.
a weird place to be.
It is interesting too. Yeah, it is a weird place to be because there is this blind. Yeah, I can't say I'm close with that many Republicans at this point. I have one true friend who's a Republican, and he's super smart and actually very senior guy in that world. And yeah, he's just sort of like, I understand all the facts that you have. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I'm not a climate denier, but like, I don't know. It just doesn't. I don't care about it because somebody's going to figure it out. It just doesn't matter to me. And it's very interesting. And I agree with you. It's hard for me to relate to that because I'm like, but did you really see what's happening? But yeah, there's this blind faith that like, oh, we'll adapt, we'll sort it out, no big deal. And I don't know. Why do you think, can I ask you a question? Why do you, it seems like there's obviously a handful of chefs who, spend some time on this and do some incredible work. But I feel like even chefs who are dealing with this on a day in and day out basis, it's not like core to our culture.
No.
It's not like a fundamental point to how we operate. Why do you think that is, given like, I mean, man, we're in this, right?
Well,
I mean,
I think I have my answer, which people may not agree with. I think all of us would want to have the closest relationship to nature, to a farm, to the oceans, to any protein, any sort of life that you take to put on your plate. I think that anyone that's good will want that, because not necessarily because of altruistic reasons. It's because it tastes more delicious, right?
right.
And this whole idea that this farm to table movement, I think actually probably had a net negative because it cast this large net that everyone could go under. It's like, oh, I do this. I go to the green market. That doesn't mean anything.
Right.
And also, I think that it's almost impossible. You have people like, Ed Lee, that's trying to, Cheyenne, DC, that's trying to do like no plastic, no anything. Very few people can do that in any restaurant. There are some, and it's extremely difficult. And God bless them. I have no idea how they operate the restaurant the way they operate, where it's almost completely sustainable. And then you have other restaurants, like we're both fans of Blue Hill Stone Barns, but like as much as I love Blue Hill, that is not something that you can use as a model. We don't have Rockefeller land. And it's great that it exists. I love that it exists, but it almost makes it unrealistic for anybody else to even. So like, I know this because like, if you see like, man, like I want my own cow. I'm never going to get my own like butter like that. Like you just sort of give up. You know what I mean?
Right, this is Bessie, this is Martha, and this is Jenny's cow. You're just like, okay.
So you're just like, I'm just going to keep on. It almost sounds like your Republican friend. Well, I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing to the best of my abilities. And my job is hard enough just keeping the business afloat. So it's I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of fool's gold that chefs were the ones to sort of be the custodian of this message of sustainability. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's harder and harder to keep afloat right now, right? I mean, man, the industry's in crisis, and so yeah, I hear that. Just staying alive is, I guess, the victory, right?
Unfortunately, yeah. So, is there anything else in your book that people need to know about? Because they're not going to tell them why they're not going to fall asleep reading about policy.
Because it's only a small part. Policy is a small part. There's some good White House stories in there. and which are more entertaining. And I think we talk about a number of the opportunities for change that we can all be a part of. And I think in the end, if we don't start to care about this more and advocate for more and shift what we're doing, even in small ways. I mean, you know, I love a good steak. Like I'm very far from a vegan, but like as a society, we have to start eating less meat. It is a big drive. It is by far the biggest driver of emissions in the system. So, there's things that we can do in our own homes, bringing, these issues into our communities, our workplaces, just even asking, like, what are we doing we doing anything on sustainability and food? Do we care about our health? Just asking those questions wherever you are, I think has a big impact. So there's things in there about what people can do and how they shape our culture that is hopefully, inspiring.
I mean, you have restaurants that have gone to all vegetarian or vegan, and they almost always switch because
Yeah,
people
we have
don't
a
want to
very
support
famous
it.
one.
They
We have
don't
a
want to
very,
support it.
very well-known one just did that a couple
Right.
weeks ago.
And, you're talking about protein. I'm like, all people talk about is protein.
I know.
That's all they
It's a weird
want.
moment. I know it's a weird moment for this, right?
Especially now with people on GLPs, restaurants, I mean, protein is through the roof, carbs are way down. It's like the opposite of what should be happening is happening.
This, I mean, yeah, you see some of these influencers online, like carrying their steak and raw milk in their travel bags so they could not dare eat anything else. And they're just walking around with like bags full of meat. It's fucking weird to me. But yeah, it's a problem. If everybody ate like that, the world would be totally on fire. Like, so there's a real contradiction and conflict there. Look, there's other ways to get protein. It doesn't always have to come from a piece of meat. And like, not all meat from an environmental standpoint is created equal. Like eating a chicken has a pretty light impact on the planet. Like its feed conversion, like the amount of food it needs to eat to create a pound of animal meat, like a chicken versus a cow, is like not even close, like 100 to 1 to 4 to 1. Like chicken is a much more efficient way from a like environmental standpoint to consume animal protein. So if you want to eat meat, and I do, like you moving down the spectrum, smaller the animal, the better. Pork is way better than a cow. A pig is way better than a cow. Chicken is better than that. So there's just slight shifts that hopefully doesn't rob you of that protein meat experience that could also be quite meaningful, for sure.
Like you're on the ground, you're meeting with founders all the time, and really getting in there. Is there a company that you're looking at or thinking about that is very exciting to you that can help be a solution to a lot of these things?
So many of the questions like, where do I start? Who do I pick? I mean, across the board, there's, through the whole value chain, there's companies that are doing some amazing stuff. I mean, Inari in our portfolio has using CRISPR technology to have plants express genes so they can deal with drought or deal with pests and disease with no foreign DNA and dramatically increase yield. These are the kind of tools that I think are going to help us feed ourselves in the future.
And what do you say to people that are like, "Oh, that's not organic. You can't fuck with shit like that," because it's going to happen.
Oh, it's coming. Yeah. So I think the right way to think about this is who benefits, like how is it that tool used and who benefits from it. And if it's like giant corporations that just can use whatever that tool is to spray more chemicals and make more money, then yeah, I don't think it's a good thing. But if you're using that tool to say it's like more nutrient dense, tastes better, I can reduce the cost of making it so people can eat, more affordably, or we can just make sure it can survive this crazy environment that's going to have to navigate, then I'm for it. And like, I think we're going to have to get off I mean, I eat organic whenever I can, but we're going to have to get off our sort of holier than thou approach to some of these things, because this is going to be about like, can people afford a basic plate of food? Like there'll be people with plenty of money who'll be fine, but like for most people, that's going to be what it's about. So I think we're going to have to reshift that kind of very anti-innovation mindset if we're going to be able to, grapple with the real challenges and solve any of them.
But that's sort of what I was talking about with this farm to table movement in food, where a lot of these ambitious restaurants that you've worked in, I've worked in, the gatekeepers of this world are all advocates, and we're all on the same page. I don't think that anybody thinks that having a, you know, beautiful vegetables for your restaurant and kids, like nobody's in disagreement with that. But I just think that the conversation is, when you get outside that bubble, it's not accessible to everybody, you know?
At all. No, I think that, man, I think the point you made about that, about the farm to table sort of net that everybody's sort of been able to get under, and the lack of the models that are out there are just totally in a different, economic space that is not replicable, is super spot on. And I think there's this anti-technology innovation mindset. Somehow it's like we need to go back. If only we need to go back. It's like you literally can't go backwards. It's not possible. Society moves forward. I think there's like lessons, traditions, wisdom that we've lost that should be kind of brought forward into our ways of doing things. But this idea that somehow we can harken back to some idyllic time, and all technology innovation is somehow bad, is just silly. The history of the whole system is about tools. Like the plow was one of the most revolutionary things that's ever happened to humanity. It transformed civilization. And there's been a number. The tractor, completely transformational thing that happened. So the whole story of humanity is a story of tools and agriculture, and that's going to continue. And I think the question is, what are we building these tools for, and how are we using them? And I think that does have to change. There's been plenty of powerful tools that have not been to the benefit of eaters or farmers, frankly, for that matter, ultimately. And that's what we're trying to do, right? I mean, I think that is a lot of the work. But I think from a consumer side, like, people have to start choosing, what they perceive to be a better, more sustainably produced food. There's a lot of greenwashing. So there's a lot of companies out there saying this is regenerative, whatever, this or that. I actually don't give a shit whether they're doing it or not. If we all started buying any product that says regeneratively produced or sustainably produced, that sends a really powerful signal to these companies that we want that. Then it's up to advocates to start to say, you know, uh, you're not actually doing what you say you're doing, and they can kick the shit out of these companies that are, bullshitting people. But just for us to start saying we care about this will be transformational. And that's not happening right now at all. Right now, the companies are looking at marketing like nobody's buying this stuff. I'm not going to spend any money on trying to transition my systems or use these new tools, and that's where it gets stuck.
Well, it's not easy, and I think we're all sort of part of the problem too, right? Because it's just such a fucking mess. So, I hope people take your book very seriously. I hope they read it, and man,
There's reason to be hopeful. I mean, it is intense.
seriously, like, what is the hope? Like, you got to give people hope.
No, I genuinely am hopeful. Like I think there's some, if we decide to, if we decide we start to care, like if people say, I'm going to start to buy and signal that we care about this, and we can get the right people in office who believe in science and are willing to try to put some policy in place to incentivize things in the right direction, I actually think we could come out of this fundamentally in a better place from a food system standpoint than we could imagine today. And because I think we can change how growers are incentivized to behave and start paying them to solve the biggest problem we face, that would be transformational to agriculture. Right now, farmers are just on the edge, which is why they, use these tools that for efficiency's sake, quote unquote, that are having a terrible impact on the planet. But if we started saying, no, we're going to pay you to do something different, and you can make more money this way, and you have big emitters basically paying, our farmers to farm in a much better way. Dude, that's like that opportunity to shift the system has never happened before. I think that's very real. Right now, we don't have the people in place to do it. Hopefully, in a few years, that changes and swings in a harder direction than we could have imagined, without this insane moment we're living through. That I genuinely, I'm hopeful, but not necessarily optimistic, right? Like, I'm not sure we're going to do it, but I know we literally can, and we have the tools. And so, um, if we all start paying more attention to it and we all vote, for anybody who cares about food and cares about our economy and cares about our kids, you don't even have to care about climate change. Just care about your children, care about having the foods you love, and a vibrant economy. And then you should be putting people in place that, are going to work on this issue. We can. So my hope is not fake. It's real. I'm very worried, but we can absolutely mitigate the worst of what we're facing for sure. We just got to start acting at scale in a way we're not right now.
Well, that is a positive note to end on for sure.
I tried, man.
Sam Kass, buy his book, The Last Supper, and you're on the book tour?
Yeah, what's left of a book tour, but yeah, I'm doing a little bit here and there. Yeah.
All right, buddy.
Appreciate everything you do. Appreciate your bluntness. You've been just a force for the industry, and it's been fun to be on here with you, and it's been great to do all the work with you, man. It's been a ride.
Amazing. Thanks, buddy.
All right, brother. We'll talk soon.
This episode is sponsored by Anthropic, the team behind Claude. You know that moment when you're developing a dish that's almost there, but not quite? That's when you need Claude, an AI collaborator that works through culinary complexity with you. It genuinely helps you work through culinary decisions as you build your intuition. I think that AI is so important for not following recipes to becoming a better cook, where you can make thoughtful decisions independent of anybody else. That is what separates somebody that's merely good to somebody that's great. And Claude goes beyond easy answers and explores techniques with you until something truly clicks. Try Claude for free at Claude.com AI/DaveChang and see why the world's best problem solvers choose Claude as their thinking partner. That was Sam Kass by his book, The Last Supper. I feel like we could have talked a lot longer, and Sam has many, many intelligently informed thoughts about the foodways here in America. I love chatting with him. He's just a great guy to get a beer with and just shoot the shit, because he can talk clearly sports and baseball and culture, but he is one of the, I think, real experts when it comes to the field of policy in America. And I'm just thankful that guys like Sam exist, and he's doing the good work. So yeah, buy his book and, be a little bit more thoughtful. Listen, no one's a bigger hypocrite than me on all of this stuff too. I think we all are. And I think that's the hard part, but, first of many conversations. What do we got here? Ask Dave. David, what do we got?
We've got an Ask Dave from Penelope from Brooklyn, who is a cooking level, majordomo level 6, but a 4 when being a lazy ass. Penelope's favorite dish that they make is a Filipino chicken adobo, and they also like Thanksgiving dressing. Penelope's best meals have been at a lot of places we've talked about on here, Pujol and Elcano and Tickets in Barcelona and La Mir Brazier and Lyon. Penelope's question is, I've heard Dave say many times that there's no reason to make ketchup at home, which you certainly have heard that a lot. But what, if any, condiments are worth doing at home?
Penelope, thank you for sending this in. And up until recently, I never cooked adobo. Until Dinner Time Live for Joe Coy, we did a fish adobo, which is not traditionally what it's made with. And boy, was I missing out. I just thought it'd be way too acidic. But there's a lot for me to learn about Filipino food for sure. And Pujol in Mexico City, Elcano in Galateria, one of my favorite restaurants. Tickets is the closed sort of casual restaurant by the great Albert Adria. Listen, the reason I say no ketchup, and I promise myself I'm going to stop with all the hyperbole, right? Because I don't want to say anymore the best of the restaurants and you got to eat at this. It's the most delicious thing in the world. Because there's always exceptions to the rule. So never making ketchup. Listen, there are some chefs I'm friends with. They're like, I make ketchup. And I also tell them you shouldn't be making ketchup because that's not a point that they can't. Is that the best use of time? Right. And we just had an hour conversation with Sam Kass about changing how you might approach things. And I think making ketchup is one thing and it can be fantastic, but maybe there's time and effort that could be put into other things. I also understand there are moments where you should and have to make ketchup. But my comp for ketchup is Coca-Cola. And I don't know if I would encourage people to make their own Coca-Cola. I know people have. We have tried to make it, and it didn't taste nearly as good. And it took a considerable amount of time, effort, and manpower to make something that was just not even passable. All right. So it's not about, I don't want people to try to master something. I just think that in a restaurant, it's very difficult to do. So you got to find a point somewhere to stop. And I would understand if, for example, Magnus Nielsen, when he had Favakin, he has new restaurants that are in southern Sweden now. And he had to make a lot of ingredients from scratch because it was so far away. That makes total sense to me. But when you're in, say, Los Angeles or New York City, I don't want to say that you can't, but at the same time, I think that it might be a little difficult to do. So, as a comp, I would also say maybe Coca-Cola is not the best one. Salt. Making your own salt. I don't know if that's going to be better than the salt that you could buy. So making your own sea salt, that's a lot of work. So that's sort of the reason why I would not do it at home. And at home, you could screw around and do your own thing. That's no problem. But I think in a kitchen, in a restaurant kitchen, I think that's a harder thing to sort of stomach, to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to spend 20 hours every week making ketchup, because probably that's what it takes to do. One person spending 20 hours. And at home, I would never make ketchup at home either. I would just never make Heinz 57. It's so good. Condiment, I make salad dressings all the time. Any emulsified sauce I make all the time. Mayonnaise, I usually use QP, but there are times where I'll make an aioli or my own mayonnaise. Let's see here. Ginger scallion sauce, if I want to make, condiments, like, you have Momo has all kinds of sauces, and we have the chili crunch and all that stuff, but you can make all that stuff at home too. So, to me, it's just how much free time you have. So, that's my 2 cents on it. No one's going to stop you from making ketchup. No one's going to stop you from making your own, Fleur de Sel. But there might be better time spent. And listen, at the same time, I'm thinking out loud, this could also become a business for you. So I don't want to prevent anybody from, say, starting something they're passionate about, but for sort of just because you like being a home cook, do what you want. I'm just not going to do it. Anyway, keep on sending your questions to askdave at Majordomo Media. You can DM us on Instagram, email us a 30-second voice note to askdave at Majordomo Media, and working on some bigger, better prizes. So keep on sending those in. All right. Young David is going to help me clean up. I am now going to start making this ramen broth. And, ramen originates in China from lo mein, and it's a noodle soup. The diaspora of ramen is everywhere in the world right now. But the original kinds of ramen, the Chinese sort of restaurants that serve ramen, were the genesis of the Tokyo ramen shops or Japanese ramen shops that we have today. And in my sociological, anthropological opinion, ramen became sort of what it was, perfect sort of time and place, because as hierarchical as Japanese society is, right, it somewhat feels like a societal caste system to me, especially food-wise, right? If you're born into something, it's really hard not to stay in that lane the rest of your life. If you're making sushi, you're making sushi. You're making tempura, you're making tempura. Not always the case, clearly the exceptions to the rule, but not necessarily born. But you're not allowed to sort of break free from the tradition. You're not allowed to really express yourself. That continuity is what's made Japanese cuisine what it is today. It's just like tortoise wins the race kind of mentality. And because ramen was historically the lowest level of cuisine, people that started to cook it were the misfits and the outcasts and the rebels in Japanese society, and they had the most to say, and because they had nothing to lose. And in my opinion, that's why ramen sort of took off. It was the one way where if you were into food or you're Japanese, you could find something that expressed to you like an avatar. Ramen shops and ramen chefs became like avatars of the things that you wanted. And there was just this bonanza of growth in Japanese ramen from the 90s, early aughts. And clearly it took off in the world today. It's what sort of got me curious about it. And there's so many styles. We're not going to get into the multitude of styles and the history of ramen. But I just wanted to show that there's nothing that's authentic. You can't say that ramen's one thing, and that's sort of the beautiful thing about it. It's one of the reasons why I love kimbap almost more than sushi, because sushi can only be a certain thing. Korean kimbap can be anything. Same with this. I think that ramen can literally be anything. There's no rhyme or reason to say that what's authentic and isn't. And clearly there are going to be some people that disagree, vehemently so. But that's fine. You can agree to disagree. But I think I'm pretty accurate on sort of how and why it sort of proliferated and became so popular. But what I'm going to make today is a little bit of a classic style merged with some of the Wafu contemporary sort of things that happened. My favorite ramen shop in Japan, it was a place called Aoba, A-O-B-A. They did this double dip method, which was 2 kinds of tare. And that's what we're going to try to do today. I'm going to incorporate some of the flavors that we've done with Momofuku over the years. And traditionally, I have always loved the cleaner, classic style broths. Occasionally, I'll love a tonkotsu style ramen, roku rinsha kind of sukemen. There is artistry in making that, but it is so loud. It is so in your face. I don't always love it. And it's also just a gut bomb. So I think there's more technique and there's more finesse, and there's something I appreciate more in broths that are just cleaner and more simple. That being said, usually these are made in candy stoves, right? Big pots, steam kettles, and I don't have the time today to sort of cook it in a normal pot. So what I'm going to do is sort of hack this and use a pressure cooker. And I'm just going to take some pork butt. I'm not going to get any color on it because there's going to be so much umami in this dish. I don't worry about getting Maillard reaction and getting, say, like 5% of umami developed from the get-go. I just want to get this started. I want to extract the broth. I'm going to add some garlic and some ginger in here, a little bit of some seasoning, but that's pretty much it. Lots of garlic, ginger, and we're going to cook the hell out of it. I really wouldn't normally do this, mainly because this is going to, I just gave you the whole thing. I would want a cleaner broth. What's going to happen here, because it's cooking under pressure, that pressure is going to fuse together the fat and the water molecules and make an emulsification. So it's going to get naturally cloudy, but it's going to be way less cloudy than, say, a tonkotsu. So I don't want you to think, oh, Dave, you're more of a hypocrite than normal. I'm just telling you, time is not on our side. I'm now going to start on the tare. Oh, I forgot something. Got 2 types of chicken. Got chicken thighs. I'm going to add this. I view chicken and ramen to be almost like, again, I use the word base note a lot. You may not even notice it, but I really think that chicken, and here's the deal. I'd be using chicken backs and feet and bones, or whole chicken. So that's what you could do. So we're still going to use that meat, but when you are pressed for time and you're making it at home, I actually don't mind making broths with meat because that's what makes it more flavorful in general. And now we're going to roast off some chicken. Any kind of chicken that's going to work. I think chicken wings make terrific sort of broths and sauces, and that's what we're going to use with this. So there's going to be a lot of blending here, right? I'm going to cook this out. We're going to use the meat in here that's going to go on top of the ramen as toppings, but more importantly, we want to extract all the pork flavor from the pork butt. We're going to roast this off. We're going to deglaze. I don't have any sake today, so we're just going to use some white wine. I've never done that before, but let's just fucking see what happens. And we're going to turn this into one of our tares. This one, we're going to use So this right here is not enough water to make the ramen broth. Here's gonna be majority of our broth, and we're gonna make this seasoned with kombu, shiitake, like a classic combination of dashi is kombu and katsuobushi. Shiitake is often added because it has so much umami in it, so we're gonna add those, especially dry shiitakes. And another thing that became really popular in the early aughts was adding dried shellfish, mussels, scallops, sometimes shrimp, sometimes saba, dried mackerel, any kind of dried seafood, steeping it in like a tea gave it a modern flavor of like, not overly seafood shellfishy, but it was just like a wonderful balance, right? This cuvee of, this mixture of pork and shellfish and chicken and meat, salty, sweet. It was just really beautiful. So we're gonna do that, and we're gonna add a little bit of sardines. And I'm sort of making this recipe on the fly too, so I'm not sure exactly what, but I know I'm gonna start off with some kombu and shiitake in here. So in a lot of the top Japanese, I'm not top, just most, if you see broths happening, not broth, ramen, soup being made in Japan, they're putting it in giant bags, so it's easier to extract. It's like a Japanese bouquet garni, but that's why I'm sort of making multiple pots. And just as a reminder, making this at home is a giant fucking pain in the ass. And this is gonna be around like 150 degrees. So I'm taking some of these sardines. I don't like using the heads, and you wanna take the guts out. It doesn't have to be perfect. A little goes a long way. In 2002, I can't remember, I was in between jobs, and I got a job at Bally's Casino in New Jersey, Atlantic City, New Jersey. Because believe it or not, there was no ramen shop outside of one in Midtown Manhattan. And that ramen shop, this is before a Ryder I can open up, that ramen shop actually bought all their stocks and had these steam kettles that looked like they were making it, and I finally found a way to get inside the kitchen and see, and they weren't making shit. So to my knowledge, there was no website, there was no internet, there was no way of finding any ramen shops because there didn't, to my knowledge, exist. So the only place I knew I could go was a noodle shop that served ramen, and that was in Bally's Casino, Atlantic City, New Jersey. So I spent 2 weeks there, and I learned something really cool, is that they were adding, they had a lot of things I didn't like, but they added ham, right? Ham to their broth, and it gave it that funk. But again, my belief is that smoke, the smoking of food, is this undercurrent that threads through so much Japanese cuisine. And I think that we needed that sort of smokiness, but out of paying respect to the things in Japan, I didn't want to authentically get, and besides, we were so broke, I couldn't get the fucking ingredients I wanted, so we improvised, and we started to get country ham and bacon from Alan Benton of Benson's Country Hams, Madisonville, Tennessee. Talked about a bunch, central figure in my life in food, and use that smoky element of pork over hickory and infuse that into our broth. So while it was not traditional, the concept was really authentic to me. And if anything, authentically cooking to me is sort of taking the principles and being honest to them and not necessarily getting the facsimile from Asia. So I'm gonna try this instead of bacon because I think this is gonna work just as well. This is pre-sliced country ham. And I think this is gonna help because I don't necessarily, it's so funky. It's got enough smoke where it's not too much. Added that chicken fat. We're gonna add some more oil to this. And my anchovies. And put that on low heat. And just let that ride. Usually I get more color on this, but pressed for time. I'm going to deglaze. We don't have sake, so I'm just gonna use some white wine. This is mirin, garlic, knob of ginger. I'm so glad I'm not making this on Dinner Time Live. What a fucking pain in the ass. Soy sauce. Cook that down. I'm gonna cut these tips off. I'm also gonna boil 6-minute eggs because to me, I love a runny egg yolk. And when, I'm gonna say, to my knowledge, we were the first people in the world to put onsen tamago on ramen. And I say that without saying it 100% confidently, because at the time in 99, 2000, I had every ramen book ever fucking made. At the time, every magazine. And every kind of egg was put on ramen. Every kind of hard-boiled, soft-boiled egg. But I had never, ever, ever seen onsen tamago. And the only time I've ever seen onsen tamago, again, I wrote it in our cookbook, was in a movie called Formula 51 with Samuel L. Jackson. I was sitting next to a woman and she had a yakudon and she was cracking an egg and I was like, that's pretty fucking crazy raw egg. And out came this perfectly cooked egg. That was poached. And she popped it and I was like, what the fuck? That was the thing I'll never forget because I'd never seen anything like that. And little did I know at that same year, the great Andoni Aduriz of Mugaritz at Madrid Fusion was demoing a slow temp cooked egg at around 60 Celsius, 60 to 63 Celsius. And 63 gets it a little bit more jammy, 60, 61 Celsius gives it way more runny texture. Again, I love eggs in soups. It's sort of synonymous with Korean stews because it adds not just protein and fat, but a layer of luxury, inexpensive luxury to a dish. So the reason why I added onsen tamago is historically they would put it in the sulfur hot springs in Japan, because they're everywhere, in a basket, and they would let them cook. And at a constant temperature, which would be a really hot, sort of hot tub temperature, you cook everything in the shell and the egg, and it's perfectly cooked depending on the temperature, but you can get a perfectly cooked egg without it being a hard-boiled egg. The reason I wanted to do that was I wanted to get that jammy, beautiful, seasoned egg that you see in so many ramen shops. But the problem was it took a long fucking time. And at the time, it was just me. I didn't have any employees. And peeling those and cooking those just took so much fucking time. So I just remembered, how could I add egg to this dish? I couldn't crack a raw egg in. I'm adding way more context to this because another thing, when working for Andrew Carmelini at Café Blud, we would add a lot of cooked egg yolk. So when we make a vinaigrette, we would actually boil an egg for like a minute. So the egg yolk would just have some of that rawness cooked out, and we would just take the egg yolk, and it just was a wonderful way of making emulsion because it didn't taste so eggy. So thinking of that reminded me of, I don't know why, of Formula 51, the onsen, and we started to cook those in hotel pans. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that Andoni was doing this. We started to cook it over the pilot flame in a deep hotel pan, which 6 inches. We put a 4-inch perforated, and we put like a carton of eggs, and we would just put our finger in it. And that's how we knew. If it was hot enough for like 7, 8 seconds, if you could put your finger in there for 7 to 8 seconds, that was the right temperature to get the perfect egg. And that's how we did it for many, many years until we got water circulator technology, and now everybody does it. But I say this sort of insane thing, and I'm not trying to say, oh, we're the first person. To my knowledge, we're the first people in the world to put pork buns in a ramen restaurant and to use onsen tamago, because no fucking ramen shop, to my knowledge, ever put onsen on ramen. So that's a long way of me saying I'm not going to do that. We're going to add a slow poached egg because I only have to make like 2 or 3. 1, 2, 6 minutes, and we'll shock in an ice bath. That is fucking delicious, man. Holy shit. Whoa. That's fucking really good. So I'm going to strain that, let that ride. And that's going to be one of the tare broths. And we're going to strain this out, reduce it down, add some sugar, and that's going to be how we season the broth as well. And I'm going to remove these because we're going to still eat these fucking wings, just not. This is like family meal. Brown sugar. I'm going to add a couple pieces of arbol chili. Not to make it ripping hot, but just to give a little bit of balance to the black pepper that I've added. Very nice. All right, it's all coming together. MSG. This already, I didn't even need that MSG. This is a glutamic acid bomb already. So much umami. A little over 6 minutes. Put it in an ice bath. We'll wait another 15 seconds. Strain this tare out. We're not throwing the ham out. We're going to save the ham. We'll make that as a garnish too. That smells like ass. Like a locker room smell, but in a good way, if that makes any sense. Like, smells fucking... I don't even know how, but it smells so fucking bad in a good way. So I'm going to take these wings out now. They've done their roll. And as I said, you no need to throw this away. Just bake in the oven, get them crisped up, and you have a nice snack. Strain this out. I like peeling, well, how should I say? There's a lot of things to peeling a soft-boiled or medium-boiled egg, one of which is put it directly in boiling water, I think. It does make a big difference in terms of the age of the egg. Older eggs work better. And I'm just going to pop that in the tare. And then once I crack it open, either it's running water or water, because once you soak it, water gets in between the membrane and helps you peel it off. With these eggs, I would not normally put them in the tare. I'd put them in a different solution and like serve them cold, but I don't have the time. And you'd want them to at least marinate in a similar solution, quite frankly, or anything that's dark and flavorful with soy for a couple days. That's another thing, like you gotta be at least 72 hours ahead on this. So imagine if I'm doing 300 orders of ramen a day and the kitchen's 600 square feet, the whole restaurant's 600 square feet, kitchen takes half of that. It's hard to be 900 eggs in, right? Because that's what you would need. You would want to be, honestly, 600 eggs ahead of schedule. And that's a lot of time, it's a lot of space, and it's very hard, which is why we chose not to do it this way. Is that Bianco?
It's gotta be, yeah.
Get him in here.
What's up, Big J?
Hey, dude.
Oh, look at that. Come on, man.
Making some homemade ramen. Oh, fuck. You want to come back in 30 minutes?
I'll come back in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what? I still remember like you boiling that fucking chicken with just that much water.
Yeah.
I think that's still one of the best techniques out. Just saying, that's unsolicited.
So I just mixed the dashi with a shiitake. Oh, you want to taste something fucking crazy?
Yeah, fucking A, man. That's fucking crazy.
It's so crazy, right?
Tastes like a chicken skin ate an anchovy.
That's crazy.
That's interesting. It tastes ancient.
Right?
It tastes like, a Roman orgy of
Roman orgies are right.
of flavor.
Come back
Delicious.
in.
I will. I'm gonna be back.
Come back in like 20
I'll come
minutes.
back.
20 minutes. 20 minutes.
I'm gonna come back. I'll leave my spoon for the people over here.
So I made a cuvee of the broth, and ideally, this pork would be marinated in the same tare. So like this is all happening in a span that is not necessarily how I would do it. Thinner.
Would it be insane to marinate and like eggs in other sauces?
No, not at all. This probably needed to cook for another I don't know, hour, but you get the point. This right here, this part of the butt, the shoulder is my favorite. It's like the eye. It's where all the sort of the muscles in it sort of join in. And it also has the most sinew and collagen in the shoulder, something I've cooked a lot of. It needs another hour, but it's fine. We're good. We're doing good.
So you can't really stand home puree at this point because you've made it so often, been around in the kitchen and stuff. Have you ever gone through that phase with ramen?
Well, I don't eat ramen as much as I used to. Number one, it's like so not unhealthy. I just don't eat it as much. There was a period where it's all I would eat. And I would say it's like, listen, I used to listen to the Led Zeppelin every day, you know? I just don't do it anymore. But when I do, it's like, oh yeah. So most people don't love the fish cake. This is not the traditional fish cake that is used in ramen, but I've always loved. So traditionally, in ramen shops, they season the tare, they pour the broth unseasoned, they season it with measured scoops of tare, and then they add the noodles. Since I've never made this before, I'm gonna just season it in a batch because I have no idea what the fuck, what exactly it's gonna be. And I'm gonna feed a few people. So I'm just gonna batch out, pre-season. This is not looked favorably upon in a ramen shop, which you do a la minute, but fuck it. So here was the dashi blend with kombu shiitake katsuo. I'm gonna add some of that, one tare, then I'm gonna add some of this tare.
During your time in Japan, where were you mainly when you first went over there?
Meidemai. First part was in Wakayama. Not Wakayama, Izumi Tottori. The main city near me was Wakayama.
Did you speak any Japanese?
At the first time, no.
Take a seat over there.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, look at that.
Welcome, homemade ramen.
Oh my God, look at that.
Irashaimase! Photo time.
Holy cow, man.
This smells like, I smell that umami and the udari.
Mommy and the Who Daddies.
Yeah?
God damn.
Dude.
That's fucking good. It does that oil tastes like delicious, like schmaltzy,
That's the
fishy,
point. That's the point.
Oh my God.
fucking shit.
How are the noodles?
Delicious.
Good.
And how dead they got down.
Oh. Get out of here. Texture on point. Man,
That's delicious.
I mean,
it clings to the broth too.
I didn't have enough time to cook the pork all the way, but
Just cooked to me.
Damn.
what do you think?
It's funny because you've been doing something to this. Like, you've been towing the line of, like, you don't want to do the tonkotsu, super thick, rich bone broth. You don't want to do, like, super, super light. It dawn's on me now, like, your thing right in the middle is, like, not... It's so good, man.
It's a nice pasta. Nice everything.
Dude, this is fucking good.
It's super good.
This is really fucking good. Fuck. God damn.
How long does this take you, Dave? The whole thing?
90 minutes?
90 fucking minutes. Is this from the new book, 90-Minute Ramen?
It's actually outrageous.
Hey, Mark!
It's actually outrageous.
Andrew, come out. I think this is one of the better ramens I've ever made.
Is it Benton's?
Ham.
I think this is, I mean,
I mean, you guys both.
I think this is the best bowl I've ever had him make for me directly. It's crazy. Yeah.
This is fucking good.
You don't mind sharing a bowl, right?
I got a cold going.
So you do share. Do you mind?
Well, he probably
probably mind.
Andrew doesn't mind
I
at
don't give
all.
a shit. I don't mind.
Well, you guys can figure it out then.
Here, you know, I've never thought of. Do you think if you do a single person's portion of pasta, Italian pasta, you think it's more or less than in a bowl of ramen?
So I think this is
You think there's more pasta?
no. There's like 125. But it depends. I mean, like an Italian American or like an Italian portion. Both, you know,
Here you guys go.
both,
Thank you.
both serve a purpose, you know.
Outside of tortellini and brodo, is there pasta in soup? Like there's a noodle soup?
Pastina, and a little pasta, only in brodo. Pasta fagioli, and different shape.
So you're saying we still got that over you?
This is legitimately delicious.
It was outrageous, actually.
There's no over me. There's only us. This is what I'm here to fucking do. I'm here to heal. There's no borders here. There's no lines. No maps. It's just shitty and not shitty. That's what we got. Love.
This is firmly in the not shitty category.
This is not way not shitty.
Well, I'm glad you guys came at the right time.
It's crazy though. It's like that's the best bowl I've had you make. It's crazy.
That egg is.
Egg is.
I'm happy.
Was your dashi bacon and anchovy? The
No.
ham and anchovy?
I simmer in oil this anchovies and Benton's bacon. Not the separate. That's the second time.
That's this. Oh my god.
It's balanced. It's pork. It's what I wanted. Pork high,
porky.
chicken low. You know, salty, sweet, umami, vegetal notes, dashi high.
I
All
don't know
sort of
shit,
happy.
but it's fucking good.
You know it's good.
That's all you gotta know. And I'm full. I just fucking had too much. Are we on right now? Mm-hmm. We're filming?
To 2%.
I won't use bad words. Huh?
What do you think?
I wouldn't know if we were filming because I won't use bad language. I gave it up. I gave up the F-bomb.
No, you didn't.
Nah.
That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. I'd have nothing left. I'd be back.
You only know 3 words there. Damn. That's spectacular, Dave. Seriously.
That really is fucking fantastic.
That was like really shocking. I should open a new restaurant, huh?
Yeah, a little
Old man
place.
can still dunk.
That's funny. That is funny. Well, I appreciate it, guys. Well, that's our episode today. Thank you, Sam. Thank you to my customers. We're doing Tempopo Part 2. Chef fallen from grace rediscovers
You know what they say?
fall in love with food to begin with.
We had low expectations and there was even lower prices. We loved it.
Worth every penny.
No, everything's fucking delicious.
Give us 5 stars.
5 stars. Simple
We got a lot of
story.
shit coming up. A lot of things changing. Netflix. Dinner Time Live.
It's all happening.
All happening.